all year round.
It's so mysterious.
This is who we are.
This is who we are.
WADR.
WADR, promoting dialogue.
Good evening and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on WADR.org. Welcome to Newslink, and here are the top stories. Senegalese National Assembly lifts parliamentary immunity of Mustafa Diop and Salimata Diop. Reporters Without Borders say press freedom is experiencing a worrying decline in sub-Saharan Africa.
The situation in the Sahel, for example, in Burkina Faso, we have had the closure, the arrest of a lot of people. The arrest has been impacted journalists.
Sierra Leone declares public health emergency after Mpox outbreak, and Liberian government to host fundraiser to secure UN Security Council seat.
Liberia was a signatory to the establishment of the United Nations. And since we have had a seat, but that seat was sort of a rotational seat, so it wasn't what we're looking for now.
Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Here is Imo Edit with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast. Let's begin here in Senegal, where the parliament on Friday lifted the parliamentary immunity of MPs Mustafa Diop and Salimata Diop, cited in the case of alleged embezzlement related to spending from the COVID-19 Pandemic Management Fund. The deputies adopted by a large majority the conclusions of the ad hoc committees responsible for deciding on the lifting of the parliamentary immunity of the two former ministers. Abdullah Hassan has more details in this report.
Mustafa Diop is cited in the case relating to the management of the COVID-19 Response and Solidarity Fund allocated to the Ministry of Industrial Development and Small and Medium-Sized Industries. Her colleague Salimata Diop, then in charge of the Ministry of Women, Family, Gender and Child Protection, is also implicated in the same affair according to a parliamentary report. The Ministry of Industrial Development and Small and Medium-Sized Industries, then headed by Mr. Diop, Deputy Mayor of Louga, received 2.5 billion CFA francs for the acquisition of masks, according to this document read by MP Marie-Angelique Mamsilbi Diouf. Rapporteur of the laws, the Centralization, Labour and Human Rights Committee of the National Assembly. The Court of Auditors report shows that the Ministry of Women received an envelope of 150 million CFA francs from the COVID-19 Response and Solidarity Fund. In accordance with Article 52 of the Rules of Procedure of the National Assembly, only the chairman of the committee of the Bureau of the Ad hoc Committee is responsible for deciding on the request to lift the parliamentary immunity of the two deputies, the rapporteur, the deputy or his defender, and one speaker against could speak.
Abdullah Hassan filed that report. Meanwhile, ahead of the World Press Freedom Day on Saturday, Reporters Without Borders RSF says press freedom is experiencing a worrying decline in sub-Saharan Africa. In its latest report released on Friday, it reveals a deterioration of press freedom around the world. RSF further stated that journalists and media are facing difficult economic conditions. On the positive note, however, Senegal registered progress in press freedom, claiming 20 places. Sankli Jangle filed this report.
In sub-Saharan Africa, press freedom is experiencing a worrying decline according to RSF. While Eritrea, 180th, retained its position as the worst-ranking country in the index, similar patterns appeared in other conflict zones such as Burkina Faso, Guinea and Mali. Sadibou Marong is head of RSF for Sub-Saharan Africa.
The situation in the Sahel, for example, in Burkina Faso, we have had the closure, the arrest of a lot of people. The arrest has been impacted, journalists being conscripted to the army and others also having forced to flee. We also have seen how regulatory bodies, they have been used against journalism, putting pressure on that. For example, in Guinea, there have been nearly 1,000 jobs cut in the widest major sector because of the decision of the minister to ban main media, for example.
The economic score deteriorated in 80% of the region's countries. The hyper-concentration of media ownership in the hands of political figures or business elite without safeguards for editorial independence remains a recurring problem, according to Marong.
Ownership of the media is something which has been crucial in many countries, for example, where media has been concentrated among, for example, political actors, among also groups, businessmen, and among also those kind of people. And that has been problematic in countries like, for example, Nigeria. We have seen more or less that has been also impacting the independence of journalists.
In contrast, Senegal, 74th, moved up to 20 places as its authorities launch economic reform initiatives which still need to be implemented and carried out in consultative manner, RSF says.
But the challenge is, going forward, countries like Senegal should retake their own places. They have always done traditionally as a kind of beacon of press freedom.
For over 10 years, the index results have warned of a worldwide decline in press freedom. In 2025, a new low point emerged. The average score of all assessed countries fell below 55 points, falling into the category of a difficult situation. For the first time in the history of the index, the conditions for practicing journalism are difficult or very serious in over half of the world's countries, and satisfactory in fewer than 1 in 4.
Thank you for that report. We cross over now to Nigeria, where governors of 6 northeastern states have resolved to adopt multidimensional approach through kinetic and non-kinetic strategies in tackling insecurity challenges in the region. The governor said addressing insecurity in the region must go hand in hand with tackling youth unemployment, poor infrastructure, weak education systems, and widespread poverty-related problems. The forum, while commending the federal government toward improving the national security, also expressed concern with the resurgence of insurgent activities in some parts of the region. The forum also drew attention to the deteriorating condition of federal roads in the region, which they said had worsened insecurity and hampered economic recovery. Here is Borno State Governor and Chairman of the forum, Babagana Zulum.
Let me commend the efforts of the members of the armed forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria in their determined efforts to eradicate the menace of insurgency. I urge you to sustain the fight so as to bring this war to a successful end. The recent re-emergence of attacks by the insurgents is a matter of serious concern, capable of undermining the successes already recorded in the theater of war. May I humbly suggest that the military should revisit its operational strategy so as to be more offensive. Your Excellencies, poverty level in our region is alarming, and it is imperative that we take bold steps to address the challenge. We must recognize that poverty is not just an economic issue, but also a social and humanitarian crisis. To tackle these challenges, we must adopt short-term, medium-term measures, and we should focus on rebuilding and revitalizing our agricultural sector.
That was Borno State Governor and Chairman of the Northeastern Governor Forum, Babagana Zulum.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Sierra Leone has declared a public health emergency over a worrying outbreak of monkeypox, with nearly 200 new cases reported in just 2 days as part of targeted screening. According to the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA, 763 cases of mpox and 6 related deaths have been recorded in Sierra Leone since the start of the year. The capital, Freetown, remains the epicenter of the outbreak, with 4 treatment centers having opened since February. Most districts across the country have reported cases. The World Health Organization, WHO, reports a growing number of confirmed cases of monkeypox, with more than 200 confirmed cases in the past week. The WHO says this reflects an increase in transmission in the country. In response to these sudden increases in cases, more than 1,000 people, mostly health workers, have been vaccinated, with 60,000 doses donated by the WHO. The single-dose strategy also targets sex workers, contacts of cases, and other high-risk groups. Nigerian President Abdurrahman Chani has appointed the members of the Consultative Council for Refoundation, a key step in the institutional process launched after the February 2025 conference. According to a statement from the government's General Secretariat, the appointment marks a new step in the process of institutional reform. Christopher Teacher completes the story.
This decision comes 2 weeks after the adoption of Ordinance Number 2025-07 of April 18, 2025, establishing the CCR, a body provided for in Article 68 of the Refoundation Charter, adopted at the end of the conference held from February 15 to 20. Placed under the authority of a coordination office, the new consultative body is responsible for formulating opinions and recommendations on the major direction of the national life for the attention of the National Council for the Safeguarding of the Fatherland, CNSP, and the government. The CCR is structured into 6 thematic commissions covering areas of peace and security, political reconstruction, economy, geopolitics, justice, as well as health and education. The full list of 189 members, published this Friday in issue number 4149 of the Sahel Dimanche newspaper, reflects a composition described as representatives by the authorities. It brings together personalities from the country's various social and professional strata, including representatives of civil society, regional department, religious associations, the Defense and Security Forces (FDS), as well as members of the diaspora. General Chiani, who was installed as head of state for a 5-year renewable term after the Refoundation Conference organized nearly 2 years after the overthrow of President Mohamed Bazoum, intends to strengthen consultation in the national reform process.
Christopher Teacher filed the report. Now, to address a persistent fuel shortage in northern Mali, a convoy of 40 tankers was escorted from Niger by the armed forces of both countries as part of a joint operation welcomed by military authorities. The initiative carried out as part of security cooperation between the two countries' response to the serious fuel shortages observed in recent weeks in several localities in northern Mali. The tankers were escorted by the Nigerian army to La Bedzanga on the border and then by the Malian Armed Forces Fama to Gao. The commander of the 1st Military Region, Colonel Ibrahim Samassa, praised the commitment of the military authorities, particularly the Land Command, as well as the cooperation of the local population. The supply marks a relief for the inhabitants of Gao who are facing an energy crisis made worse by the region's isolation.
Several political authors have promised the populations of the north to refuel them following a break of a few weeks. It is in this context that about 40 tanks from Namu were escorted by Nigerian armed forces as part of the collaboration between the armed forces of the SA. And from Labe, the farmers took over and escorted this fuel to Gao without major difficulties. We really remain available for any escort in this major access in order to supply the northern region with fuel and basic necessities. I thank the highest Iraq authorities, namely the 3 commanders, who did everything possible to facilitate this sovereign mission. I thank the people for their frank collaboration in the success of this mission. Discipline, especially the drivers of the tankers.
La discipline, surtout the conducteur de citernes.
Beninese government spokesman Wilfred Lande Hungbeji has denounced the spread of false information related to terrorist attacks in the north of the country, accusing some compatriots of relaying propaganda from armed groups. He reaffirmed the state's commitment to supporting the armed forces while justifying the executive's caution in the face of calls to declare national mourning. Recall the April 17 jihadist attack on Beninese armed forces positions in the north of the country officially left 54 dead. Francis Boniface completes the story.
In a national television interview, the government spokesperson reiterated that this figure has not changed, denying the 70 deaths reported on social media. Wilfred Leandro Ngbeji denounced a, quote, manipulation operation, end of quote, orchestrated by, quote, assassins, end of quote, with the propaganda department, which some Beninese, according to him, are exaggerating out of naivety or complicity. The spokesperson cited the example of October 26, when alleged ongoing attacks were disseminated online using videos taken abroad, causing panic. He warned administrators of online groups of their potential responsibility for spreading subversive content. According to him, offices funded to destabilize Benin by 2025 are active inside and outside the country. They are said to employ a digital army tasked with spreading messages of wariness and distrust of institutions. Ungbeji defended the government's military strategy, stating that the state is mobilizing significant resources to support the army. He, however, acknowledged that some attacks managed to bypass security forces due to the asymmetrical nature of the conflict. Regarding regional cooperation, he recalled President Patrice Talon's efforts to strengthen coordination through the Accra Initiative, spearheaded by the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS. This process, he lamented, is struggling to move forward due to a lack of commitment from certain member states.
Francis Boniface filed that report. You're listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Senegalese National Assembly lifts parliamentary immunity of Mustafa Diop and Salimata Diop. Reporters Without Borders say press freedom is experiencing a worrying decline in sub-Saharan Africa. Sierra Leone declares public health emergency after Mpox outbreak. And still ahead in the news, Liberian government to host fundraiser to secure UN Security Council seat. We do have a guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Don't forget you can listen to us live on wadr.org, and we invite you to follow live stream on YouTube and Facebook. Now, in the move to boost its bid for a non-permanent seat on the United Nations Security Council, the government of Liberia is organizing a fundraising event this Saturday, May 3. The event will take place at the Sentinel Pavilion in Monrovia with a target of raising $1 million United States dollars. Senior political advisor to the Liberian president, Magdala Cooper, emphasized that this initiative is a collective effort inviting all Liberians to participate in the event. Notable figures including former President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf and George Weah have been officially invited to join this important occasion. Ambassador Cooper expressed confidence in Liberia's chances, highlighting that the country is currently running unopposed in its pursuit of the esteemed UN seat, marking a progressive step forward in its international representation.
Liberia was a signatory to the establishment of the United Nations. And since we have had a seat, but that seat was sort of a rotational seat, so it wasn't what we're looking for now. This will give us a better platform than previously. And you also know that Liberia presented the first female president of the General Assembly, which was Madam Angie Brooks. And so Liberia has played a critical role. I came on board to serve or to support the fundraising activities because, you know, all of these things require funding, requires resources. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs have been doing a fantastic job going across the world, meeting with various head of states, asking and soliciting their support. And it is our duty here at home to make sure we support their effort because this is, again, I've always said, this is not a party thing. This is not an administration thing. This is a Liberia thing. When Liberia wins, we all win, no matter what party or institution or affiliation you are with. And this is why I came on board to support the fundraising effort. I was challenged to raise $1 million to support the effort, and also not just the campaign team movement across the world to solicit support or votes, but also at the end of May, there will be a campaign finale event in New York, which is slated for May 28th. That's going to take place in New York. And then on June 2nd will be the voting day. We need to secure 125 votes. Liberia is very, very close to obtaining 125 votes, but we're not going to just stop at getting 125 votes and sit down and say, okay, everything is over. And then on election day, we realize, oh, that person didn't show up to vote, then we lose. We are going to go above 125 votes.
That was senior political advisor to the Liberian president, Magdala Cooper, speaking there. Meanwhile, demands for a cultural transformation to enhance women's political participation have intensified in Liberia. The most recent call comes from Lema Gbowie, a peace activist, social campaigner, and Nobel laureate. She argued that the involvement of women in politics is not only an issue of equality, but also a necessary step towards addressing critical issues that deeply affect the Liberian society. WDL's Monrovia correspondent Abraham Parker report.
Lema Bowie emphasized that women's empowerment is crucial for the comprehensive development of the nation. She challenged the long-held belief that politics is exclusively a male domain and urged women to reject the notion that political engagement is a people's thing dominated by men. The Nobel laureate argues that this perception has historically been used to intimidate women and prevent them from pursuing leadership roles. Reflecting on her experiences growing up in Liberia, Bowie noted that discussions about political leadership often excluded women. She warned that if the current mindset continues to view politics as a male space, it could take decades for a woman to rise to the presidency of Liberia.
And one of the first things that we need to do if we're trying to get more women in political leadership in this country is a whole process of reorientation. There was this slogan that automatically crept into the women's spaces. Politics became the people's thing. When every time you want to talk about political leadership, every conversation about politics was, when President Sterling at the time was a political activist, I would hear women in the community say, we know why the woman can just leave the people's thing.
Lema Bowie's passionate plea served as a rallying cry for the women of Liberia to embrace the call to leadership, take their rightful places in governance, and contribute to the nation's progress. The responsibility now lies with both women and society as a whole to dismantle these outdated perceptions, ensuring that the political landscape is inclusive and reflective of Liberia's diverse population. For Newslink on WADR, I'm Abraham Parker reporting from Monrovia.
Elsewhere, police authorities in Ghana have launched investigations into a deadly shooting incident which left 5 men dead in the eastern region of the country. The shooting took place on April 29 at Asiyo near Nsawam in what is believed to be a dispute over sand mining. At the same time, the Ghanaian police announced that it has rescued 2 women whose kidnappings were captured in 2 separate viral videos. WDL's Accra correspondent Nadi Detete report.
The Ghana Police Service says it has rescued 2 female victims whose kidnapping were captured in a viral video following a coordinated operation with the National Signals Bureau and the Nigerian Police Force. According to the police, 8 suspects were arrested from various hideouts in both Ghana and Nigeria in connection with the crime. They noted that further details will be made available as investigations continue. The service also expressed appreciation to the 2 collaborating agencies for their support in the rescue and arrest operations. In a separate development, the Eastern South Regional Police Command has begun investigations into a deadly shooting incident at Esiao near Akwani Dobro in Nsawam in the Eastern region, which occurred on April 29. Police say a crime scene team dispatched to the area discovered the lifeless bodies of 5 men with gunshot wounds. Recovered from the scene were 2 vehicles, a Toyota Tacoma and a Toyota Tundra, along with a pump-action gun loaded with 17 live cartridges, 4 empty cartridges, multiple empty shells, and 5 heavy-duty motorbikes. Preliminary investigation suggests the shooting may have been triggered by a violent confrontation between 2 groups over sand-winning activities in the area. The bodies have since been deposited at the police hospital for preservation, identification, and autopsy, while investigations continue to bring the perpetrators to justice. For WADR, Nadidi Tete, Accra.
Politics,
analyses on major news,
social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Well, the guest interview segment this evening takes us to Mali, where political parties are calling for mobilization following their dissolution, which was approved by the government at the Council of Ministers meeting on Wednesday. Their dissolution is a recommendation of the National Consultation of the Political Parties, which concluded earlier this week. The political parties are organizing a rally tomorrow, Saturday, in Bamako to reject what they describe as a democratic backsliding. Our guest is Amadou Koita, former minister, president of the Yelen Kura Socialist Party, who is one of the organizers of the rally.
We
reject these recommendations outright, from 16 to 6. The recommendations resulting from these consultations are contrary to the foundations of Mali and also contrary to all the Republican values we share. This is why we have decided to reject these conclusions, and we have also decided to conduct political activities to denounce this state of affairs, to call on Malians to mobilize widely, to save democracy, to save the rule of law, to save Republican values.
According to the authorities, it was Malayans, through a national consultation, who recommended the dissolution of political parties. How do you intend to mobilize Malayans in a context of repression of critical voices?
No, these are not consultations that the government was kind enough to organize. Otherwise, the revision of the Charter of Political Parties stems from the National Refoundation Conference, which brought together more than 176,000 Malians, who had also called for the adoption of a new constitution, a constitution in which more than 3 million Malians voted. The Malian constitution removes Article 185, the stipulation that it cannot be subject to any revision of political pluralism.
Does the dissolution of political parties to better regulate their new creation, according to the authorities, not somewhat reflect the wishes of political actors who themselves had called for a reduction in the number of political parties?
Yes, all political parties are now actively involved in the revision of the Chamber of Political Parties. Political practice has been regulated in Mali, but this is tantamount to wanting to dissolve all political parties. We believe all this is not good for our country. Today our country needs unity. Our country needs unity to defeat the forces of evil, namely terrorists. This can only be done by working together, and this can only be done by respecting the laws of the Republic. This can only be done by respecting the Constitution. This cannot be done by excluding an important step in Malian society. For me, there is no democracy without a political party. So today we are calling on the authorities to be wise, to say that it's possible to continue down a wrong path. But if we realize we want ways to work together, we want ways to act as they are. We want a clear, precise, and concise electoral calendar. We're already 4 months into the transition. The time has come for us to give. The political party charter has been repealed, but political parties will once again be able to be created on the basis of a new law.
You met in Bamako yesterday, Thursday. What did you ultimately decide?
We're organizing a major rally on Saturday, where we launch a vibrant appeal to all patriotic and intellectual forces to come together to save the Republic, to say yes to democratic values on Saturday.
Amadou Koita, former minister, president of the Yelen Kura Socialist Party, who is one of the organizers of the rally. In sport news, betting at home on the fourth day of the Sahara Conference of the BAL, the Senegalese club AS Vio de Dakar has been a balanced record of 2 wins for 2 defeats against Cape Verde, complicating its path to qualification. Despite a strong performance from Mark Gay, 20 points, and the support of the crowd, the Bar's men crumbled in the final moment. Patrick Miglan, who scored 29 points, was the executioner of the evening for the Cape Verdean side. In the second match of the day, Angolan club Petro de Luanda, the reigning champion, consolidated its position by defeating Tunisia's US Monastir 78-68. This result increases the pressure on the Dakar side, who will have to beat Petro on May 3 to hope to remain in the contention in this tough competition. And that's it on this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Maudo Juf and Umudanyogo for the technical support. Do connect with us on all of our social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, at WADR News. I am Emo Edet. Good evening.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, New Me FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County,
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Nibe County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM. FM, Riverside County. Wakata FM Radio, Banga, Liberia. Radio Gulf FM, 91.3 Sierra Leone.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about you.